themselves the elite.
Better than you, and you know it.
If not us, who? And if not now, when?
We don't care about race or gender or sex or religion. If you're an elite athlete, we want you.
Change the world. We are going to change the whole universe!
This is what you call a paradigm shift.
He saw what wrestling was and realized what it could be.
All Elite Wrestling!
For the 14th time, it's Monday morning. And you know what that means? It's time for the next chapter of the only professional wrestling podcast that is changing the world every week. This is Seeing the Elite, an AEW podcast. I am your host, Bryce Renam, joined by my friend, my co-host, my tag team partner, Mr. Jonathan Davis.
How's it going, buddy?
This is our final episode before Fyter Fest. And man, what a road it's been. What a very short road it has been to this special event, Fyter Fest. And we're excited to get into it today. We're going to have predictions for Fyter Fest as well as all the news that happened this week.
Yeah, you say short, but we had at least a month of build to Fyter Fest, where with Fight for the Fallen, we have literally 10 days.
Right, it's kind of weird because Fight for the Fallen and Fyter Fest have kind of been building for months now, while other shows were building.
Yeah, and they've definitely been flipped because when Fyter Fest was announced, we were like, okay, this is going to be like a hour show maybe, and Fight for the Fallen was like, okay, this will be not necessarily long form pay-per-view, but it'll be a longer show because it's benefit. They're going to do some stuff, big story stuff, whatever.
Right.
And now we have a 9-match card for Fyter Fest that seems so weird.
And a card for Fight for the Fallen, which happens like 3 weeks from now, that has like one match announced.
Yeah, like 3 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna be fun. It'll be interesting. I look forward to Fyter Fest. I'll be watching it, but it feels weird. I'm gonna be more excited that once we get past these two events, and then we can start really having that time to build towards All Out, because that's gonna be like that. Like we've been saying, and Cody's saying that's the big tent pole. That's the big deal. So it's gonna be fun though.
I'm ready for it, man, for a number of reasons that we're going to get into. I'm not going to be able to watch it live. I'm super upset about that. I got to stay off of Discord and stay off of the internet until I can get home from the rock shows in other states that we're doing and watch the show and then immediately go into recording the podcast with you. But oh man, I'm super excited for it. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Jonathan and I are two friends, fans, lovers of professional wrestling who are here every single Monday morning with all the latest news from All Elite Wrestling. This is not a sports entertainment show. It's an entertaining sports show supported by fans like you from all over the world on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, podcast services everywhere. Subscribe, review, give us 5 stars just like Big Dave Meltzer. It makes us feel so sweet. Jonathan, how sweet?
It makes us feel too sweet.
Too sweet. Facebook.com.
Yes, we're nerds.
Facebook.com/Seeing the Elite. If you want to stay updated on when episodes go live. Hint, Monday morning. And then Twitter.com, we're at Seeing the Elite with no G. Seeing the Elite, if you want to get at us on Twitter. The scorecard for Fyter Fest for our Pro Wrestling Scorecard League will post on June 26th at 2 p.m. New York time. That means you got to come try and beat our champion Equal Scorpion 1 if you fucking can. And the only way you're going to be able to do it is if you're part of our Discord server, tinyurl.com/seeingtheelite. Become a part of our awesome community of AEW fans and talk all week long about whatever comes to mind. What a week we had this week. JD on the time codes, as always, if you're looking for specific news stories. But other than that, we're going to have to get right into it.
Before we do, I will say, there is the chance that the scorecard will be posted late again. I think it's going to be a much, much lower chance this time, but, just keep that in mind. It may not be at exactly 2 o'clock. It may be 5 because, with Double or Nothing, they had to push it back because of potential match changes, but, just keep that in mind.
There are always ones for surprises, AEW, yeah. So now and then with pro wrestling scorecards, they, at least in the past, with I think All In and Double or Nothing, they kind of had to be like, well, we're going to put it out at this time unless they tell us that there's going to be a road to Fyter Fest like an hour after that or something like that. And then we're going to watch that and then put it out if nothing changes, right? So, but good on them for being so attentive.
They got lucky for Double or Nothing because nothing really changed. But you could tell they were on like, oh, fuck. Why are you doing this to us?
A lesser company, a lesser creator would just put it out and not give a shit, but they care about the scorecards that they put out, and we love them for that. And so it's going to be roughly around that time on June 26th, unless things change for them. And if they do, we'll let you know in Discord. But the only time you're going to see that, the only way you're going to see that is if you're a member, tinyurl.com/seeingtheelite. Important note, last week we reported that Fyter Fest would stream for free. Unfortunately, this appears as though it will only be the case for viewers who watch through Bleacher Report Live. Fight, who will carry the event internationally, is charging roughly $10 for the event, depending on your region, which is very strange considering that Fight shows free shows all the time. Like, they have that capability. MLW streams for free. Different events from StarCast have streamed for free. So very strange that they have decided not to do it for this one. But
it's a little weird, but in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense. You need to have a little bit of money there for production costs and infrastructure, so it makes sense. Also, everybody that ordered on the Fight app got Double or Nothing substantially cheaper than everyone else.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of payback. I mean, it sucks that it's $10 for this, but still, it's $10.
Right. It's not so bad.
You guys didn't have to pay $50.
The 1 hour pre-show will air live on YouTube, and Fight for the Fallen will have a similar deal from everything that we've heard this week, as we'll get into later. So if you're looking for it there, I imagine the 1 hour pre-show that's airing live on YouTube will also be on Bleacher Report Live. It was for Double or Nothing. I imagine it will also be on Fight. But
I would pretty much bet on that being the standard going forward.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them not to just include it on the other apps because you're shooting yourself in the foot of getting the purchasing, stuff. Yeah, so just if you have trouble with Fight or BR Live, I know some people did for Double or Nothing, just hop on YouTube.
Well, that's how it is, man. If you're in the U.S., Bleacher Report Live, watch the show for free this coming Saturday. And if you are in the U.K., you have to watch it on Fight for $10. The pre-show will be on YouTube, streamed for free. Pro Wrestling Tees is running a sweepstakes. The winner receives a suite at All Out for up to 12 people and 3 parking passes. Use our referral link and help us win when you sign up. tinyurl.com/2suite. That's tinyurl.com/TOOSUITE. and help us all get in there. If we have space in the thing, we're going to be talking with our community. If we pull off this win, it's going to be a huge thing. And we thank you all for helping us out with that. Quote, "It's notable that New Japan put its U.S. title on a guy who can't even work for them in the U.S. It's still up in the air whether Moxley will be recognized as champion or will wear the belt at Fyter Fest," which ultimately is both up to Tony Khan agreeing as well as New Japan agreeing to it. He did neither on his independent dates at Northeast Wrestling this past weekend. This shows how much things have changed, and not for the better, between the two sides. Earlier this year, when New Japan had the visa issues that kept all of their Japanese talent off the American tour, and AEW was just started, it was noted that they could have saved the tour in the eyes of the fans by using Omega. Some of the dates were when Omega was under control, so they could have used him no matter what. One or two dates would have been after the contract expired, at which point he may have been signed with AEW, but AEW had no problems allowing him to work the entire tour. Of course, New Japan didn't even think in that direction, nor would they have made a play for Omega so far this year, but it's gone from wanting to build a relationship to that no longer being the case. Now, it's important to note that he's not going to be wearing the U.S. title at Fyter Fest.
No, he absolutely will.
He's not even going to be at Fight for the Fallen because he's doing the G1. He's not doing the G1 U.S. show. The very next show is in Japan, and it's the same time as Fight for the Fallen, basically. And he's not going to be able to do it. And you're welcome to research that, Jonathan, but I checked it out. That's how it is. Those next few days they're running. Like, Dallas is like a day or two before Fight for the Fallen, and then he's running Japan shows through Fight for the Fallen.
Yeah, you have to run the whole time, but I thought they had a couple days before all that. Either way, yeah, he's not going to be wearing the belt at Fyter Fest. If he was, he would have worn it at the independent dates. That he isn't, that shows that he is not going to be. It's interesting that they put the U.S. title on him. I don't think it's necessarily. I think people are reading a little bit too much into this. I think they wanted to put a title on him, and the U.S. title is just the one that made the most sense. Putting the big boy title, the heavyweight championship on him, or the intercontinental one on him didn't really make a lot of sense.
Well, you usually got to work in that company for years before they even think about that, right? So
right. They have the open weight belt, but again, that's a lesser thing. It's not really a big deal. It's kind of like the mid card belt in that company. The U.S. title has some prestige to it. It's only had essentially American guys wearing it, or just non-Japanese guys. So that's kind of why they did that. I think they're looking into it a little bit too much. As for New Japan not using Omega, that's their own fault. They fucked up. They could have. They should have. There was no reason not to. He was under contract. Yes, he might have missed the last 2 dates, but they shot themselves in the foot by not promoting him and making the money off of those shows when they should have, and building an audience. They cannibalized their own sales. I could see an argument of why they didn't use him, because if we can't use him for the whole tour and he's not going to be in our company going forward, let's not promote another company. Even so, Kenny Omega was the name that American people know for New Japan. That he was the only one left. If you wanted to sell those shows, you should have used Omega, because you had him under contract. There was no reason not to. You chose to sit him.
Yeah. This, of course, comes to us from Dave Meltzer, so take it with a grain of salt, because everything he knows comes out of the mouth of somebody else. But I think the point that he's trying to make here is that AEW was and possibly still is game for a partnership at any time, and New Japan Pro Wrestling seems to be the one with some sort of strange baggage that isn't just ROH. Like, they for some reason don't want to be a part of that company in any way.
So the way I look at it is there's 2 sides of this. So they could just be doing this because they don't want to announce anything until until the television deals have been announced, like fully announced with dates, times, all of that. Makes sense. The other thing is ROH is a problem for New Japan, as well as AAA being a part of AEW. New Japan has partnerships with ROH in the U.S. and CMLL in Mexico, so that's a problem. You can't have the intermingling of the talent. It's not as big a problem as it used to be, but yes, that is leading to potentially an issue.
I would say that it's leading to potentially an issue. I've seen the problem brought up by a lot of people who talk about AEW, who follow AEW. I think it's probably a smaller issue than they think it is for a couple of reasons. First of all, yes, AAA and CMLL are competitors. They hate each other to the extent that WWF hated WCW, perhaps even more, probably even more.
Probably worse.
They've been fighting for a lot longer. That said, they've also put their differences aside for business in the past, and for business a lot smaller than this. Pentagon and Phoenix worked both companies at the same time. Rey Mysterio has worked both companies at the same time.
When Phoenix came back and was working both, I think he was actually a large champion for both at the same time.
Yes. When it makes sense, business-wise, for them to work together, they fucking do it. And this is a case where it would absolutely make sense for them to work together business-wise in the most tangential way possible, right? Secondarily, I also think that New Japan recognizes that you can take CMLL, your partnership with CMLL, and you can take your partnership with ROH, and you can throw them both in the trash because they're not even remotely as valuable as a partnership with AEW would be. And I'll tell you why. Talent aside, fucking name brand aside, whatever, in all of those cases, talent, name brand, and the one that matters, which is fucking money and television deals and shit like that, like resources, AEW's got more than either of those companies have and will ever have. So, and they haven't, and they've run one fucking show. So like everyone's like, CMLL is a problem. CMLL is kind of a problem. And I understand Japan, different culture, not ones to strike people from the record when over whatever, right? You know, but, you can't sit there as a business and be like, oh, but our precious relationship with CMLL, like even CMLL, if they were sitting right here, would be like, no, really, who gives a fuck?
It is more CMLL than ROH. ROH is that for that relationship. ROH is benefiting way more from New Japan than New Japan is benefiting from ROH.
Man, they have been for a long time, but now more than ever.
Yes. I feel like that contract itself is really just New Japan is waiting for that to expire.
New Japan is a bigger company in America than Ring of Honor is.
Yeah, now absolutely. But yeah, that's just kind of where that's at, because in the past, New Japan's had partnerships with Impact and TNA for a long time. Fucking Okada was in TNA as part of his, journey of in learning different styles. So that's not unheard of for them to just switch companies. The CMLL one can be a little bit different. That's a little bit shakier, but I feel like they could make that work. And that's why I really say that people are looking into this a little bit too much, because I really do feel that New Japan is really just waiting for that ROH contract to expire, and then they will be moving over to AEW. The reason why they're not breaking that contract is because of who now owns ROH, and that's a very problematic company to fuck with.
Well, beyond that, let's examine this.
I think that's really the issue, is that they don't want to get involved in a legal issue with hardcore right-wing crazy
I don't mean to minimize that. That's definitely a part of it. But let's examine here from a business perspective what they have to lose by waiting.
By waiting 2 months or by waiting a year?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
2 months, I don't think they're losing that
As long
much.
as what they're doing right now is profitable for them as a company, and their relationship with AEW is not soured, and AEW is on the fucking tip, AEW knows, like, hey, here's what we're waiting for, they have absolutely nothing to lose by being like, hey, when we're ready to do it in a year, like, we'll do it. But right now, we can't because of this deal. Let us get through that, and then we'll talk. As long as everybody's cool with it, as long as those relationships aren't soured, then the only thing they have basically nothing to lose by waiting and everything to gain by waiting.
Yes. And I feel that that's really where this is at, because I don't feel that Kenny, the Bucks, Cody just bounced out of New Japan and just say, yeah, fuck you, we're out.
Right.
There were conversations taking place. I really feel like there is no bad relationship here. I think this is people making a bigger deal out of this than it really is. And it's also Meltzer doing Meltzer. He's making news. He's drawing people in, because that's what you do. That's, as a journalist, you have to draw people in and you have interesting opinions. People need to stop taking his word as the gospel. It's not. He is hearing secondhand, sometimes third, fourth, fifth hand from other people, because those are his sources. What the New Japan executives are doing, what Gedo is doing, none of us know. We will never know. Japanese business is more insular and closed doors than American businesses.
Sure. And
So
never
you're not-
mind the fact that it's happening, 10,000 miles away.
Right. So people need to take a step back. They're literally probably wait. It's my opinion. People can say I can be wrong in 6 months. They're waiting for the ROH contract to expire. They do not want to get into a legal battle with Sinclair Media. That's a scary place to be honest with you.
The thing that's interesting about...
Especially as a foreign company.
Sure. The thing that's interesting about Meltzer is that he's a really interesting character in sports writing, because he's an investigative reporter, is what he sort of bills himself as, although he also does reviews, like match reviews. But he's
also a fucking mark.
He's an investigative reporter, but he's like an investigative reporter who doesn't wait until the story's finished, right? And part of that is because he can. It's pro wrestling, especially in the McMahon era, as it were, where the show happens every single week, and things move on and shit like that. But you take an investigative reporter like Jason Schreier or someone like that, right? He has the story for months, and then when he has a conclusion of some kind, then he finishes it and puts it out, right? Meltzer has a podcast every day, basically, and a Twitter account, and so you sort of get pieces of the story that are half finished, or oh, here's a piece of the story from today. And it's developing news is not a new idea, but let's get into this being the Elite episode 157, Viva Los Tag Belts. The episode opens with Matt Jackson sitting with a coffee at an airport cafe. His phone is propped up on the table, and he's watching Cody's emotional proposal to Dustin at the end of their match at Double or Nothing. Cody says, "I need my older brother." And the camera pans up to Matt, who just rolls his eyes.
I mean, I will say this: when you're not just watching Double or Nothing live as it's happening, and you're in that emotional state, when you watch it now, yeah, you kind of roll your eyes at that moment. And I'm 100% with him. You have to have really been just driven by the emotion of that moment. But now it's dude, you're being such a girl.
Still works for me, man. This is good groundwork, though, because I think all parties understand that the Bucks kind of got to be the heels for this match. So setting them up as sort of a cynical foil to the Rhodes sincerity is smart, I think. Especially with where we're going to be when we get there emotionally with those two brothers in the ring together. I just think there's no way that they're not the babyfaces in this match. Like,
yeah, and even at Double or Nothing, the Bucks play really good at that swarmy kind of heel where they're just like, yeah, fuck you, we're better.
yeah.
That's the sweet spot for them, and that they're already building this more where they're not true heels by they're saying, by doing this, but they're doing, we need to be more of a heel right now. In a few matches, we can go and be the real big baby faces.
Right.
It's perfect.
Right. They're not doing anything dastardly. They're just, being kind of dicks, right? We go into the title sequence. We come out into a bunch of travel footage with the Bucks, set to the theme song and all that shit. The Bucks pop out of a hotel pool in Merida and thank the fans for All Out's incredible sellout that we covered last week, and talk briefly about their evening's match with the Lucha Bros, which was kind of cool. Again, as is classic for BTE, it's sort of ready, fire, aim with how they shoot things, like they had the camera in under the water and then they pull it out to do it. Kind of a cool shot. Something you should test before you do, though, because then you'll understand that, like, when you do that,
the mic gets
the
fucked
audio
up
gets fucked up for, like, the first 2 or 3 minutes after you come out of the water, because there's fucking water in front of the microphone, right? So, but again, it's BTE, so, like, they do it, and then they're like, oh, okay, I guess next time we'll pay attention to this or whatever, right? You know what I mean? Next, we go to E3 to meet Kenny Omega, who says his primary goal at E3 is to improve his mood.
So I'm just going to start off with, go fuck yourself, Kenny Omega. Your primary goal at E3, because you probably got a, press pass, so you got to go in early and see all the conferences. Your primary goal at E3 was to go see all the new goddamn video games and play all the demos. Fuck
He's
you.
an influencer. He probably has an influencer pass.
Yeah, he got in early. And I'm salty I didn't get to go to E3, but don't just sit here and tell me I'm improving my mood. Like, no, fuck you.
E3 was interesting this year anyway.
It was.
It sounds like one of the down years to go, but that's always expected when a new console is just about to come out, or the new cycle's about to hit, right? Kind of a down year usually.
Yeah, it's in a weird E3. I mean, even so, E3 is still in a weird place because they're still trying to figure out what the fuck they're going to do.
He probably does end up improving his mood. What follows is a rather random assortment of things he did that weekend. Sadly, none of the Giant Bomb footage was used. He had a pretty lengthy appearance on Giant Bomb at Night, which would have been cool to see, but I think they're owned by CBS or something like that, so maybe that's why.
Some weird company does own them, yes.
I think it would have gone a lot better here than some of the stuff that they did use, which is like him asking for a business card from an artist and shit like that, like just kind of like mundane stuff. Next, we're back in Mexico, where Matt has opted to try Coca-Cola coffee for the first time on camera. This is a Mexican, at least Mexico is one of the places that serves this product, but it's.
I will say when they were talking about this, the first thing that popped into my mind was like Four Loko, which is just like, dude, don't do it. You're going to fuck yourself up, man. Don't do it.
He did this hoping that it would be disgusting, but is disappointed to find that he kind of digs it. He passes it around, and most everyone who's present thinks it's actually okay, except for Sam Atlas, who doesn't like coffee to begin with, so obviously he wasn't going to like Coca-Cola coffee.
What a fucking monster.
unless he's like fucking loves Coca-Cola, but and that's enough to get him over the coffee.
It's possible, but it's just still anybody that doesn't love coffee is a monster.
Well, count me among the monsters, dude. Okay. But I don't wear a
but
tie
I
to
already knew
work. If
that.
I wore a tie to work, I'd probably love coffee.
I don't wear a tie to work.
Jeez. Next up, we head to the home of Christopher Daniels. CD has a long conversation with his dog about whether or not to accept the singles match against Shima at Fyter Fest. It's really poorly edited and mixed. Go ahead.
It was, but it was kind of funny, just like as he's talking, and you're trying to like the first few seconds where you're like, "Who the fuck is he talking to?" And then it flips to his dog, and he's like, "Oh yeah, been there."
Yeah, the premise was funny, but the problem is through the editing, they kind of tell the joke 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of been the case with really most things that Christopher Daniels shoots himself.
Yeah. The editing is usually just really awkward with his scenes. So basically, he starts talking and then it shoots to the other side and it's his dog, right? And then he keeps talking and then it just cuts back to the dog. And then he keeps talking, cuts back to the dog. Really 4 or 5, 6 times that he does this. Seems like it would have been a lot more effective if he'd done the whole thing as a monologue and then it cut to the dog and you were like, oh, the whole time he was talking to the dog. You know what I mean? Because that's where the real reaction of the scene is the first time it cuts to the dog. If he'd saved that for the end and the whole time we're like, who is he talking to? And then we see that it's the dog at the end, it probably would have come off a lot better than the way that he did it.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't figure out who decided to cut it that way. If it was him, like, actually, like, flipping the camera.
Yeah.
Or if maybe one of the Bucks did that, but, like, it's still the same deal as, like, most of his scenes that he does by himself are really... They're not great.
And they're so, like...
They should be decent, but they're just...
They're
bad.
not great because of the way that they're edited, and the problem is I've seen segments on this show that are edited way better, so it makes me think that maybe it's his fault. That said, and I don't know what kind of production crunch they're kind of put under on this show. I don't know creatively what that would have said to Christopher Daniels if he had re-edited it. But I think an editor who wanted to create the best product probably would have cut the first 4 takes of the dog and just left the last one in and had the whole thing run as a monologue. But
I kind of feel like that, especially like scenes like this, like they didn't really have a crunch there because they could have. They've known about the match obviously longer than we have. They could have filmed this at any time, so it's one of those just strange things.
Yeah, and I guess that's my biggest and because we've talked about it kind of several times on this show, even in the small time that we've been doing this show. Christopher Daniels and really all of the SCU bits is the problem is that you can see the joke they were trying to tell, right? You were like, I know what you were trying to do, but you fell just short of doing it effectively. It's almost like watching someone do like a skateboard trick or whatever and they land shitty, right? You're like, I could see what you were trying to do there, but it's not quite right for timing reasons more than anything usually in their editing.
Yeah, and I mean, even so, it's still just like sometimes they're funny.
Yeah.
But most times it's just not because of reasons, and it is what it is. I think we kind of got to just take a step back on these things and just accept that, we may not be having this show to watch anymore, so we need to, slightly cherish what we do get, but there's other times when it's like, man, you could have done that way better. Man.
I understand it's supposed to be a casual thing or whatever, but that's just whatever.
Yeah.
Whenever they have a segment that is done this way, it's frustrating for me because I'm like, it wouldn't be that hard to make this work more effectively from an editing standpoint and from a creative standpoint. Like, I just feel like there's maybe a timing or a misunderstanding of how comedic beats work on CD's part or whoever does their stuff that just needs to be gotten over, because there are other parts in this show that like straight aren't like that because the people doing the segments are sort of better at understanding how that works.
Yeah, that's fair.
And unfortunately,
and I mean,
the show's
just
cobbled together from a bunch of different sources, right? And so that's just kind of how it is. Next, back to Merida for some awesome crowd and time-lapse shots from AAA Verando de Escalando, Summer of Scandal. Next, Sammy Guevara is backstage when Brandon Cutler approaches him. Sammy G passive-aggressively insults Cutler for crying on camera when he got the contracts. Cutler exits and Sammy G says, "What a pussy."
Which is, that was just, I mean, I'm glad they're building Sammy G up to be a dickbag because they needed to do something. But it was just so funny to me that he's just like, oh yeah, what a pussy, because he cried on camera, when that was like just literally a real, actual reaction. That wasn't staged at all. That was 100% real emotion.
Right. What is kayfabe?
Pussy.
What is the real world now? You know?
Yeah.
It's all part of it.
Did you watch any of the AAA show?
I watched the Bucks match.
Okay. That's what I watched. I watched other pieces of it that were sketchy.
I watched Aerostar trying to kill himself in the middle of the match.
Okay, that was what I meant. Yeah.
That was a thing. For people that didn't watch...
Another moment where you see literal, actual, real reactions by Killer Cross and Scarlett Boudreaux, who are just like, oh my god, he's dead.
Cross and Boudreaux, Bordeaux, by the way, moving on from Impact this month. Bordeaux, I believe, is already gone, and Cross has to be moving on soon.
No.
Oh, no? What?
I was reading the other day that he's still under contract. He won't be released.
Wow. Fucking Impact.
She is, but no, unless it's changed in the past few days, he is still under contract, will not be released.
Yeah, they're holding on to him out of spite.
Yeah, absolutely now.
Which is silly. But okay. Scarlett Bordeaux, an incredible talent and unbelievably gorgeous. So I watched that. For people who don't know, Aerostar jumped from like a fucking 40-foot lighting truss or something like that. And
landed on his neck.
Yeah, basically landed on his fucking head. Didn't die because he's made out of silly putty. As far as we know, not only did he not die, he's fucking fine.
He's not fine. There's no way. There's no fucking way. I'm sorry.
I hope that he slows down because Lucha Libre...
What's really fucked up about that, though, is he tried the exact same spot literally the night before and fucked it up.
I'm just tired of the only time Lucha Libre gets big news to outside of the Lucha Libre community is when somebody dies in the ring. So,
and then you have him who's like trying to die in the ring.
I just hope that he slows down because I'm tired of it. Now I'm not a person who's like, oh, don't take that kind of risk or whatever. Like, you're the performer. If you want to do what you want to do and you think you can do it, then do it. It's fine. I'm not going to shame you for trying to make your art as high octane as you can, but I'm worried
my
about
thing
it.
is if you fucked it up the night before, that should tell you, like, hey man, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Pentagon, the man of zero fear, looks up at that and goes, "Oh fuck, man, really?" Just crazy. What I watched, Taya was in a multi-woman thing. I watched that. And I watched the Bucks and the Lucha Bros match.
It was a good match. Good God, the officiating was horrendous.
It was good. It wasn't, in my opinion, shockingly different from what they did at Double or Nothing. I don't know.
Other than Phoenix trying to kill the first 3 rows of peace.
That was awesome. I don't know why they didn't just have them take those belts back at fucking Double or Nothing. I think it would have been way bigger if they had. For AAA but I guess maybe they're trying to build something for the Bucks and AEW with wins and losses, right? So I guess I understand. But
it is what it is. I mean, it was a good match. It would have had better beats in it if the referee knew what the fuck to do.
Well, yeah, but he's a fake referee.
That was really the biggest issue in that match is, Pentagon's down on the ground, guy's leg covered. The ref is slowly inching his way to his knees and then just slow count. And it's like, You do realize he's won the match already, right? Because you're so slow.
BTE mailbag. Nick is asked which venue he'll miss working in the most. Unsurprisingly, Nick chooses the American Legion post in Reseda, California, that was home of PWG until last year. This is hilarious that it's his choice, because it's not as though it's a venue they could continue. It kind of avoids the question entirely by being a venue that they couldn't continue to work if they worked indies anyway, because no indies work there, right? So
it's the easy way of saying is like, okay, we don't know where we're going to be at, so I'm just going to say something that literally cannot ever do again.
Right, and that nobody will, like, it's an expected answer, right?
Yeah.
Like, anybody who's wrestled there would probably say that's a venue on the indies that I will miss. But the fact of the matter is, it's not like it's a place that they could go back to anyway. So, unfortunately. Next, Matt is asked what brand of spray tanner the Bucks use. And
this was funny.
And how much they think they've invested in it over the years. Matt says, oh, man, thousands and thousands of dollars. And that
enough money that they should just have stock in the company.
He says that the brand they use is QuickTan, while admitting that they've hidden this from the world for years because they didn't want supplies to run out. This leads me to believe that they've either moved on or this was never the actual tanner that they used in the first place. Because that's still a very real fear.
Yeah.
Unless they feel like they suddenly have time to legitimately tan now, which I feel like they have less than they ever did. Matt then... Go ahead.
They may have the time right now.
Sure.
Not in about 3 months.
Matt then sprays some on Nick's back, and his reaction to it is pretty funny.
Yeah, it was great. I love that part. It's like, dude, what the fuck, man? It's like, it's the 100% the reaction of your brother fucking with you.
Next, Sammy G bumps into the Bucks backstage at Merida. Sammy openly questions the decision to give Brandon Cutler a contract, but backs down quickly, saying, you're right, every company needs a job guy. Just more him being just like a fucking feckless asshole.
The annoying part, though, is he's trying to be MJF, but poorly.
I'm not getting that as much. I guess he's trying to be MJF's nice guy character, and I don't think he's as good at it.
This one here, this is where it's like, okay, so you're trying to be MJF.
Yeah, that's hard though. MJF's character is a character of execution. That's why it works so well. I would say there's nothing about MJF that I think is trademark MJF, you know what I mean? And like,
no, absolutely not. It was just one of those things that was just like, okay, you're doing the same thing he's doing.
Sure. But to throw shade at MJF, the scarf thing is very similar to Jericho's scarf thing. You know what I mean? So it's a little borrow and steal from everybody.
That's the name of the game,
right.
100%.
Sammy then says that the Bucks match that night sounded incredible, and then exits in the douchiest way possible. There's a pause, and then Matt says, we haven't even wrestled tonight. This was great. We then come in at the end of a conversation between Taya Valkyrie and Sonny Kiss. They pause to witness Jungle Boy pulling himself up onto Luchasaurus's shoulders, and they're deeply disturbed by the process.
I'll be honest, man. I keep hoping since we keep seeing Taya and Mundo, that it means they're coming.
I think, if anything, it's just indicative. It's BTE's way of like putting the stamp on them and being like, these guys are guys, but they're not. We can't have them in the shit yet. But I would hope that Taya's awesome. Johnny's fucking awesome. I would love to have them both in the company. I think they do great.
To be honest with you, there's no real reason why they couldn't. They could use the AAA partnership as like leverage for that.
Are they not under Impact contract? I would think that they are.
You know, Impact's weird. Because technically Impact has a partnership with AAA as well. So it's in that weird space right now where they're playing both sides against the middle.
Yeah. But I think they'd both be awesome. Taya especially for the women's roster, I think would be a really great get. And you know, Mundo's his own whole fucking thing, man. He's awesome in the ring. So,
it would honestly, it would help out a lot for the women's division to have Taya.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's more just that Mundo would be great and would totally add to the men's division, but I don't think the men's division
needs the help.
Yeah, would benefit as much from his presence as the women's division would benefit from Taya's presence, because she's great at the acting part for people that aren't familiar with her, but she's also, I think, a really good in-ring worker. Who has a lot of experience from being on top in Mexico, has a lot of experience working matches with guys, and is sort of advanced in that sort of being able to do hardcore stuff and things like that. So she's great.
Yeah, and I really feel like the women's division really needs someone like Taya as a stalwart legitimizer to build these younger girls up that don't have that name power. Like, Kylie's a great worker. She is. She's not putting asses in the seats.
I think Taya would be a great get for them. We see a fan cam of the finish to Lucha Bros versus Young Bucks for the tag titles at AAA Verano de Escalando, which heavily mirrored the Bucks win over the Lucha Bros at Double or Nothing in its construction. The Bucks are not happy about losing. They totally blow off Cutler in the hallway on the way back to the locker room. I think the idea of building it to ultimately to a confrontation between Cutler and the Bucks, maybe a heel turn for Cutler, I think is a great idea if that's where they're going. We then see an all Spanish, no subtitle promo from the Lucha Bros. But it doesn't matter because what they say is fairly obvious.
It's essentially just saying, hey, our partner is Laredo.
Yeah,
Kid.
they say, they tell the world that they have a big surprise for Fyter Fest, and that the third man for their team will be their friend, their amigo, Laredo Kid. A huge rising star in Mexico, kind of the perfect choice for the third lucha here. Not a legend, or anything like that, but definitely the type of star that you take from AAA who could really be a
big... He's Pentagon where Pentagon was 5 years ago.
I almost more Phoenix in terms of the gimmick that he has, but yeah.
I mean, like the status of where he is, of where Pentagon was before Lucha Underground started.
Yeah. He would have been a guy. Ray Horace would have been a guy who's kind of in that same spot in terms of sort of like mid card and lucha idea.
Man, that's a name that's kind of dropped off the face of the earth to me.
Dragon Lee would have been another great choice, but Laredo Kid, is going to be a great addition to the team if what you're looking for is another mask guy to come in and be the third mask, right? Which is what you would want.
And what you need, that's exactly what you need for this match, since the original plan is off. You need 3 masked guys against 3 non-masked guys.
And I'm excited to see more from Laredo Kid because he's definitely been on my radar. I've definitely seen him wrestle in trios and 4-on-4s. And this is a trios match too, but I think he'll be highlighted here because he's a newcomer. And I think it'll be really great to see him working with Matt and Nick and Kenny, who all know how to base really well for Lucha Libre. So, Tony Khan on the Steve Austin podcast this week. I encourage you all to go and listen, especially if you love Austin changing the subject to stories about his life. Which is kind of his has always been his MO. Better that than a third or fourth MeUndies ad or whatever. But
yeah, but it works better when you have other wrestlers who can talk about those events,
and you have a figure that's not so like important right now. You know what I mean? And I'm bringing my own baggage into this interview or whatever, but I'm sitting there listening to the interview kind of like, yeah, Austin, shut the fuck up. Let Tony talk, please. I want to
a little bit, yeah, but it's a little strange. I mean, yes, Tony can relate to these events as being a big wrestling fan, but it's also very strange when you're just like, if it was, Stone Cold and Jericho, they can talk back, ping pong back and forth about these things because they've had similar experiences, or they were both at the same in the arena at the same time.
Right, or if it's a young,
like continue building
if it's a young star, they can contrast with how it is today, right?
Right, but when you have a wrestling fan who's also a very business guy, but also a very high-profile figure, and you're talking about when me and Brett did WrestleMania, man, I see the same time as Double or Nothing, and Tony's just like, okay, yeah.
I don't know what you want me to say, Austin. I've already told you that I love you.
Yeah, really?
But I did listen through. I did take down what I thought was kind of important stuff for people who want to stay up to date on AEW stuff, people who are interested in the AEW side of the story. And there was quite a bit here, and kind of some rather big announcements that we didn't know about yet. So
yeah, there was some very big announcements that were kind of sprinkled in as like a little bit of afterthoughts.
Right.
I feel like when they recorded this, because this was recorded a couple weeks ago, but that they had intended to announce these things, but then they were just like, oh, whoops.
So I just have notes here for what happened. First, it's kind of cool to note that Austin paid for Double or Nothing and wasn't sent some kind of industry code or whatever, and watched it twice. And was very complimentary of the whole thing. He fucking loved it, basically. Khan says that he was a guest of the Runnels and the Massies at All In. As a gesture of good faith, he chartered the private jet that took Chris Jericho from his Fozzy show that night to Chicago in time for his run-in after Penta versus Omega. This is interesting because it indicates that talks between Khan and the Elite were in full swing prior to All In. Seeing as Matt Jackson previously said that the relationship was formed in service of this business venture, we can surmise that AEW's genesis reaches back to at least well before the night of All In. And while I can't say for sure that it's before even the booking of All In or the ticket on sale of All In, it's not crazy to imagine that that's the case, which...
I would say that they talked about this, and... had All In not been the sellout success that it was, the relationship probably would have just stopped there.
Sure.
That is a very interesting thing because, chartering a private jet, that's expensive. You and I, we just assumed that Cody and the Bucks pooled their money and did it, and Jericho paid part of it, but that Tony was just like, oh yeah, just take mine.
Yeah, and he said, I didn't ask for any money for it. Interesting things about the financials of All In have come out. We learned that Conrad basically paid for the entire over-the-budget Battle Royale. All of the talent involved with that was paid for from Conrad. The private jet now was paid for by Tony Khan. So... they did pool money, and it's not to take any impressiveness off of what they did buy for that show, but it's interesting to think of this thing as kind of more like Tony was kind of in the rafters, like, okay, if this does what I think it's going to do, then I've got a way to escalate this, but put out this demo tape and let's see where it goes.
Yeah, he was 100% of like the chartering the jet thing. He's like, I'll put a little bit of money in this, and if it doesn't work, no real big deal. I got to see a cool wrestling event.
He fucking owns the jet anyway, right? So it's like,
yeah. So it was, it's much lesser cost for him, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. It was just like, okay, it's like, to him, it's a show of good faith to build the relationship, as well as. This builds the relationship. If this goes further, awesome. If it doesn't, I'm not really out too much money.
Tony Khan's obsession with wrestling history is as impressive as it is earned. We are living in the birth of a wrestling company owned and operated by a legitimate, passionate fucking ex-tape trader wrestling fan, man.
Yeah, this is a guy who literally grew up a millionaire/billionaire because of his dad.
Sure.
Who would go to shithole flea markets to trade wrestling tapes that someone else recorded off of their VCR.
Right, was going to ECW shows and shit like that,
this
man.
is
like,
this is the kind of thing that's just unheard of.
and it's the type of thing that it just excites me so much about what this product is actually going to be when they get a chance to produce it. And I think that he's unfortunately kind of shackled by having to create a product that WWE fans will be comfortable with in some ways.
He's shackled by it, to be honest with you. I think as just the business acumen that he has, he can take that, what we would see as a drawback, and make that a selling point.
Definitely. And his concept here seems very centered around the idea of keeping the production values that people are used to, the good things that WWE brings to the table, which are production values, and doing an actual wrestling show with them, which is so exciting for me. And if there's anything that's like a standout from this podcast, it's that like Jericho has talked about it, and Moxley has talked about it. They're like, oh, he's got like this encyclopedic knowledge of wrestling and just like is a super wrestling nerd and just loves wrestling. In this this is the first time where I've really heard it on display, where I've been like, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's one thing to hear, his employees saying that and just being like, oh yeah, okay, they're talking up the boss, but when you actually hear him start talking about wrestling, and he can just, it's a little bit like Meltzer, where he can just pull a date and just talk about it. Just that amount of knowledge, where it's like, you can see he has the same amount of wrestling knowledge as he does business skills from his actual job, and that's the nice thing that you see, because you want someone that's passionate about what you're doing at leading your company and doing all these things. You don't want someone who's like, oh yeah, wrestling company, that seems cool. Yeah. What's wrestling?
Yeah. Austin loved the whole show in terms of Double or Nothing. Cody versus Dustin in particular was a favorite for him. Tony announces that the launch of AEW on TNT will come heavy with a tournament to crown the first ever male AEW Tag Team Champions. More on that later.
So we can just kind of assume that's going to be this first 6 to 8 weeks of content on there.
TV, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome to start with a tournament. It's fucking easy to understand. It's really easy to promote as a sports-centric idea, right? It keeps people, I got to come back next week because I got to see who advances. Like, it's so smart. And
And it's great for us because, day one we'll have a bracket. We can sit there. We can have our own bracket challenge. It's great, not just for us, but also for just new people, because bracket challenges are popular. People love doing them because it's low effort. You just see, throw shit at the wall. Maybe it'll work. And then you compete with your friends.
It'll keep people invested moving through the first few weeks. And that's good because, it's like they talk about the first 15 minutes of a movie. The audience is as receptive as they'll be on a movie. They're like, okay, where are we going to go? Right? Take me where we're going to go. And these first few episodes of AEW TV need to be that for people. And so, as much as TV kind of has the benefit of kind of getting better over time, like first season of shows are typically pretty bad, with the exception of like the first season of Futurama is like fucking amazing. But typically a show,
you have to avoid animation when you think about that.
Typically a show takes a little while to get into what it's doing. Takes 10-12 episodes to get into what it's doing. I think starting with the tournament is super easy, especially with the vision that they have to kind of put that across, and I think it's great. Tony reveals that Brett was cast for the title reveal at Double or Nothing from day one, which contradicts dirt sheet reports that Ric Flair was the initial choice for the segment. Kind of difficult to know who to believe here because they kind of both have a reason to... The dirt sheets and Tony both have a reason to say what they're saying.
I mean, even so, I still feel like having Flair do that would have been a bad choice. We talked about that on our wrap-up, our Double or Nothing wrap-up, that Flair would have not been great to do this. I'm sorry.
I think Brett was a better choice, both because he's more kind of unexpected in that role,
but he's also known to not be a company shill.
Yeah, he's also kind of a known renegade, right? And that's kind of better than Ric Flair, whose daughter still works at WWE. Who's going to show up with both of his Hall of Fame rings on. Not that people didn't have their Hall of Fame rings on for the thing, but
still, he would. He could have displayed the title and then showed up on Raw the following week to do something with Charlotte.
Vince would have pulled him in just cause. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do see where dirt sheets were saying Flair was the initial thing with, Conrad's relationship, that being a big deal, how big of a focus they were making him at StarCast. But at the same time, I still feel that, I think it was Brett, but either way, the correct choice was made because I don't think Flair would have done this properly because he would have gotten lost in the weeds of trying to do that promo to talk this belt up, and then he would have started talking about himself, and then he'd just been rambling on.
Taking off his jacket and elbow dropped it in the center of the ring. Ric Flair's
and then start,
right, just Ric Flair stuff. You gotta, if you're gonna hire Ric Flair, he does Ric Flair stuff. That's what happens. Okay. Tony reveals that his primary motivations for starting AEW were an overabundance of wrestling talent that was not being served, and an overabundance of lapsed or potential wrestling fans that were not being served. He goes more into detail with this later, but he's right about a lot of this, and I just want to get to some of the quotes he does later. Tony confirms that AEW will begin in the fall and have a broadcast time of 2 hours. He does not reveal the day of the week, although it is important to note that they filed a trademark for Wednesday Night Dynamite this week.
Yeah, but you're still not. You're still. It's June. They're not going to announce the day of the week until actual schedules are released. You have another 2 months.
And as Cody has said before, sometimes they just trademark shit in case they might use it.
Tony, Cody, the Bucks, they would absolutely love to just go ahead and say it. They are very much handcuffed by Warner Media and traditional TV marketing that they can't.
It's not even necessarily true that they know at this point either.
Yeah. That's the thing they've done a trademark for Tuesday nights. They've done a trademark for Wednesday nights. They're essentially covering their ass at this point so that they're not put in the place of, oh yeah, you guys are on Thursday. Do you have a name? And they're like, no.
Tony thanks Chris Jericho, which is, huge news. Finally, he's getting a thank you. Tony reveals that there will be a women's singles title and a women's tag title, which brings us up to 4 titles: men's world, women's tag, men's tag. A lot of people online have been like, what's the mid-card title going to be? From what I've heard from Tony, I don't think that there will be one, which is great.
For 4 pay-per-views a year and a 2-hour TV show, you don't have time for one.
Yeah, I really don't think that you need one. And Tony is right that, you kind of have a glass full of water for championships, right? And every time you produce a title that doesn't have its own kind of stipulation for it, like the Intercontinental title, you're not really getting a second glass full of water. You're just kind of pouring water from the first glass into the second one and being like, okay, now we have these 2 titles, and this is a title for the world champion, and this is a title for a guy who wants to be a champion but knows he's not tough enough to fight for the world championship, right? Which is like, what kind of fucking champion? That sounds like the pussy champion to me, you know what I mean? So...
yeah, the only thing of title that they could introduce that could be treated as a mid-card is they could do a hardcore title.
Right.
Because that can be done where you could you don't have to necessarily. You're not badass enough to get the world championship, but you're crazy enough to get the
or
hardcore
a Money in the
championship.
Bank type title like Gift of the Gods,
Sure.
right?
Like-
Or if they were doing weight classes, but they're not doing weight classes, if it has a stipulation on it, if it has something special about it, then, the reason why, or a television title would be great too.
Yes.
As a quote unquote mid card title, right? There's a special reason for this title. You can't challenge for it on pay-per-views. You have to defend it on every television show, right? I think that's a great idea.
And it gives it that reason of why you would keep checking into TV, because the TV title's on the line, say once a month.
I wouldn't even. I put the TV title on every night.
Oh, I meant as an example, just that this can't be. You have to go through TV to do this. You can't just wait until the pay-per-view. So at any Tuesday of night, say that's the night, there could be a title change.
Yeah,
that's something that needs to be in place, because you don't need that to know title changes are only going to happen every 3 months.
I think from Tony, from what he's said in interviews, shares this perspective, and so I think if we do end up seeing a mid-card title, it will be a specialty title like that, with either a 24/7 or a TV stip or something else going into it that
some just actual stipulation
that makes it different than a B title.
Yeah.
Because, again, you just sort of take away from both titles when you do that. He then goes on with this great quote. He says, "When you were on top, Steve, there were 10 million people watching wrestling on a Monday. Now there's 2 million people watching wrestling on a Monday." And he's not fucking wrong about that either.
So there are two sides of that.
Sure, yes. And we'll discuss
The
them
first
once I
side
get
is-
through the quote.
Sure.
Austin then returns. He says, "Where did the people go?" And Tony replies, "I think they're still there." Meaning he really, truly believes that there are a bunch of people who would be interested in wrestling, who want to watch wrestling, who just WWE is not serving them. And I don't think he's wrong. I don't think that there's potentially 8 million people necessarily in that crossover section, because of how long it's been since WWE was working for these people. But I think there's enough to build a company on, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing of it is I would say a good portion of those 10 million people are the people who are watching NXT every week, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to deal with 5 hours of content that is meaningless. NXT is an hour. You can get in, get out, watch something, good wrestling, because NXT is good wrestling. But the flip side of that is there's a lot less people that are watching TV. And not just watching TV, but that are being tracked watching TV. And I think that there could be still 10 million people watching wrestling on a Monday night. They're not watching for 3 hours.
Right.
Because it's too long.
Well, especially not when the writing doesn't ask them to do that either.
Exactly. The other thing of that is, when Steve was on top, there were a lot of kids watching wrestling. There were a lot of young people watching wrestling. That is no longer the case.
Yeah, there's something to be said about being cool.
Yeah, wrestling is not cool. It hasn't been cool for 15 years. If you're watching wrestling, what are you, a fucking nerd? Or a hick? Or a redneck? That's just always been the thing. That's the connotation of wrestling, is that it's the redneck thing to watch. It's like NASCAR. Right. That's going away now, but for a very long time it was. So you didn't really have that, 8 to 15-year-old crowd watching
It's
wrestling.
going away only because they've managed to sort of draw a parallel between themselves and comic books, which was always there.
Yes.
But now it's sort of become, because of that, because of their parallel to comic books, their parallel to fighting games, they've been accepted by the nerd community, and we're in this sort of nerd-assance, right, where everything that nerds like is cool, right? So,
in my opinion, I feel like that loss of TV viewership can be tracked by the rise of John Cena.
Sure.
People that when, I was like, I don't know the dates, but I was like 15 or 16 when Cena came around. I didn't want to see that. He was fucking stupid and annoying. And that was when he was doing his edgy shit. And then he became the golden boy, ever cleared. I'm the greatest that ever will be because I'm this kid's hero and I do
Superman,
all this.
Man.
I really don't want to fucking watch that. That's fucking boring.
Well, it's not only that. It's such a stark contrast from Rock and Austin to then go to Superman.
Rock, Austin, and WCW, yeah. You're looking at the actual literal opposite of the end of the spectrum. And, you know, as I'm getting older, I don't want to see... I don't care. It's stupid. He does the same 12 moves. He yells out his spots in the ring. It's terrible wrestling. And I don't give a shit if he's some inspirational bullshit. I want to see him get his ass whipped. Not, oh, Cena's in the match. Okay, he's
Well,
taking
to bring
the
it back to AEW, this is what we've always thought was effective about Pentagon, right? Is that the sort of kid fantasy of a hero is... a lot more altruistic, right? To a kid, a hero is a hero because he does the right thing, right? Whereas an adult fantasy of a hero is a lot more dependent on, like, does he stand up for himself? You know, does he?
You've moved from the black and white into the gray.
And it's not so much about, like, is he doing the right thing? Is he a nice guy? As much as it is like, does he do what's right for himself and the people that he cares about, right? And, you know, so we're more adults are just generally more attracted to badass heroes, right? Like fucking Rambo is unquestionably doing a fucking bad thing. Like, he's just murdering a bunch of people, right?
He's just murdering everyone.
Nobody goes like
Rambo's
a fucking psychopath villain. No, like he's the good guy in the picture.
Rambo's
right?
fucking
because
awesome, man.
Because he doesn't want you to. He's not going to let you fuck with him, right? And to adults, that's empowering. That's more empowering than he's doing the right thing. Is man, I love that guy because he doesn't let anyone fuck with him. You know what I mean? And I wish I would not let anybody fuck with me.
Right? And the flip side of that is you can have, you know, younger kids and younger people out here just like watching this and seeing Pentagon. He's like, man, I hate that guy. He's so mean. He's mean to everybody. He's the worst. He's such a bad guy. But that's keeping them engaged because now they want to see him lose. Whereas me and you are just like, yo, man, he's going to fuck him up.
Moving on. In regards to the house show business, Tony says it's not a core part of AEW's business model. He sees no wisdom in burning his top performers on non-televised, non-canon events, but likewise sees no wisdom in producing these events using only undercard talent. He says that when AEW does house shows, they will feature top performers, but that these shows will not represent the majority of a given performer's obligations as they do in WWE. Tony would like to get in a rhythm of, quote, 100 to 120 shows per year, which I think is a fine pace. Go ahead.
It's twice a week. Yeah. It's on average 2 times a week, you know, discounting times for major holidays. I feel like if you were watching this as a video interview, you could see Austin's face just completely glaze over because he can't say anything because Tony's sitting there just saying, yeah, Vince is stupid.
Right, he can't say anything because he still wants those guests. Tony
he still wants that paycheck.
Tony adamantly shoots down the idea of an off season, however, which is smart given that his current competition isn't doing it. As much as I believe in a wrestling off season would be beneficial for the performers, the reality is that seeding several months of the year to your competition is just bad business. It's not something that they can really do. It is a good forced change. If they were at the top, they'd be able to do it, and I think it would be wonderful. But with WWE running year-round, you're basically saying, hey, these 3 months, you can just have them, and it's not a great idea.
It's not. But there's ways where you can do that, is you rotate your talent.
A rotation, I think I have no problem with, and he doesn't specifically say they're not going to rotate talent here.
No. But things the Bucks have said where they're talking about, people aren't going to be on the road all the time. They're going to have time off. They can take vacations. They can have lives and have children and really be people. Really tells me that they're building up a bigger roster so that some of these guys can take 2 months off, 3 months off to rest, get surgery, do PT, whatever needs to happen, while also keeping a road crew and a TV show going that's still firing on all
and that's
cylinders.
the best for everybody because they're a character.
Because you're not killing your talent.
Well, it's not even that you're not overexposing your talent. Not even a character like Bray Wyatt, although I don't know what the fuck they're doing with him now. There are so many characters in wrestling who, if you only saw them 3 months out of the year, it would be so much better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was the Undertaker mystique for a very long time. That was why he was so, whoa, that fucking Taker's here? Some real
shit's going down. Tony says that he will never, ever have performers on the road 5 to 6 nights a week. He says it just doesn't make sense. He says that even 4 nights a week will be pretty rare. Tony says that international and indie dates will be allowed if the performer is really passionate about it and it does not conflict with AEW business. Tony's confidence in this interview is infectious.
So that statement there tells me that you're not just going out on the indies because you need something to do during the week. It's going to be like, okay, I'm going to use examples here and I might get them wrong. But Darby, go do Limitless because that's where you came up. Go for it.
Right. Or if it's something you care about, if they're doing a show or whatever, or a PWG show or something like that, it doesn't matter. Tony, I love Tony in this interview because after this, Steve Austin goes, "You think you can maintain that business model?" And Tony goes, "No, I know I can maintain that business."
It's like
he goes,
I have degrees in this.
He's like, the partners that I have, the resources that I have. He says, I know I can maintain this business, and I love that. He was almost kind of passive aggressive about it, but Austin was like, "Are you sure you can maintain that?" He's like, Austin almost asking like, "Are you sure that this idea that you have is smarter than what Vince is doing?" And he's like, "Yes, it is, because
Absolutely,
I know how to run a fucking sports team, dude. Like." I understand.
He knows how to run a sports team. He knows how to run a business.
I understand, how athletes work, probably to a better extent than Vince McMahon does.
I don't even think there's a probably in there, but yeah, absolutely. And the next thing you have where he's talking about work-life balance, that's not just a big deal in this industry. It's a big deal in every industry, in my industry.
Yeah, it's a big fight
right now.
One of
the biggest questions I was asked, and I have asked during the interviews that I've been doing, is like, tell me about the work-life balance.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the office 60 hours a week. I want to come home and not be expected to then continue working. Is that something that's in place in your company? And I've had every answer in the book on that. Thankfully, where I'm working at now is very, very focused on work-life balance. So it's that rare occasion where you're ever coming home to work or anything like that. But I've been told, it's like, no, you work till the job's done, which is saying you're here until I say you can leave because you're a cog in a machine.
Yeah. And that's how you get people to not take your job unless they're desperate.
And that's how burnout happens. I mean, you can pay me $30,000 more, but it's not worth it.
Right. If I can't ever have time to spend that money.
Yeah.
Tony, again, just lists work-life balance as a key bargaining chip for the talent. To a certain extent, it kind of sounds like he's saying that they're not going to pay very well. But like you said, I think a lot of people will happily make $30K less a year than they would in WWE if they don't have to be on the road 5 to 6 nights a week, right? Especially considering they're paying for all of those expenses. So,
yeah, if not more. I mean, there's a there's a lot of people out here, especially in this industry, who will take lower pay to have longevity.
Tony says Cody had a calming chat with Tony's father in Gorilla just before Cody went out for his match with Dustin, which is nice. That his dad was there and that he was just sort of casually chatting with the talent backstage in Gorilla, which is kind of funny.
And not just that, but also seeing like the way this is worded is like, oh yeah, his dad could see Cody was nervous, and he was just like just giving those few words of encouragement of like, just go out and have fun, man. Don't worry yourself about this. The true football coach owner.
Yeah, words of wisdom from a man with billions of dollars. Tony reveals that the Fyter Fest pre-show will run for 1 hour ahead of Fyter Fest on YouTube, and reveals that Fight for the Fallen will also stream for free on Bleacher Report Live, as we kind of reported earlier. Which is great that both of those shows are getting that treatment. I think it's super smart to get people in and get people used to paying attention to AEW ahead of All Out.
And it's also, that's the industry model now, is like you have an hour pre-show. It is what it is. It's not just, wrestling that does this, boxing does this.
I think it's
UFC
kind of
this.
dumb. You know what I mean? To do it. Because I just think it's dumb. Especially when you're giving away both for free. It's like, now we've got a free pre-show ahead of the fucking free pay-per-view, right?
That one, that's in a little bit of a weird area. It does make more sense with, UFC and boxing, where you have a distinct undercard and a separated main card. Now that's done for pay reasons. But yeah, when you have it's all free, you just say, tune in at 7, guys.
Yeah. By the way, we recommend that you go to the Nightmare Family channel, watch Brandy Rhodes' cooking show that's been resurrected. That's a shot of Brandy, which has returned to the Nightmare Family YouTube channel. It's worth a watch for any fan of the Elite. Brandy improvises some Mai Tais and then bakes a pecan-crusted mahi-mahi with an alcohol-infused jasmine rice. She's her
That sounds
her
tasty.
level of cooking knowledge is clearly fairly basic. And I say this not entirely as a snob, but it's kind of funny to watch her. Like, she has the mahi-mahi, it still has the skin on it, and she doesn't know how to remove the skin and just cooks it with the skin on, which you can do. If you do it in the right pan, the skin will actually come off by itself. But she just she cooks it and serves it with the skin on because she doesn't know how to do it.
She is very much the 30-something. I don't really cook that much, and I googled this recipe. It sounded really good.
But that's not really what it's about. It's about her personality, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of cooking shows on YouTube that are like this. That it's sort of about.
Which is what was funny with the Mai Tais, and she just fucking nailed that shit. And then she was like, whoops.
It's cool watching. It's about hanging with Brandy for 10-15 minutes. It's not really about Cody makes a brief cameo and just brags about his outer Star Wars cup that he got at the Disneyland,
As you should. He had to pay $75 for that cup.
I bet.
He needs to show it off. You got to get your money's worth.
Let's talk about the road to Fyter Fest. This episode opens with Brandy expressing her great surprise on behalf of everybody at AEW at All Out's sales success last week. She then tells us all that All Out will feature the unveiling of the AEW Women's World Championship. I wonder who they will get to unveil. Maybe just pull Brad out again to be like, I love this championship too.
To be honest with you, it's probably going to be like Lita or something.
Probably Lita or someone like that. I would think. I mean, she's the only one who's
really
like an
the only
indie
person that makes
who
sense.
would really make sense to do it, right? Following that, Jabali gives us a quick backstory on himself, reaching all the way back to his win in the 1993 blockbuster Super Nintendo Video Game Challenge. He tells us that CEO started using a wrestling ring as it staged 7 years ago, and it's only grown since then. Jabali then talks about the incident that occurred last year, where he was injured in training for his match at Kenny's show that he did at CEO, and his disappointment surrounding that.
And he, even, as you hear him talking about the story, he has every right to be disappointed because that was, you got to feel bad for the guy. That was such a freak accident, and the way it happened, and the day before the match and everything, and it's just like you're going through and just running through just to make sure you're landing correctly and your moves, and he knew his moves, and then he just landed wrong and he broke his ankle, and that's so shitty.
Ain't ballet, man. He's looking forward to the opportunity to show his full potential at Fyter Fest.
Should be like 17 quotes there, but yeah.
Next, CD gives us a brief overview of his long history with CIMA. Daniels paints CIMA as a mentor and hopes that his match with CIMA can finally break CIMA in the West. Additionally, he looks forward to getting in some singles work after so much time in tags. Next is an awesome docu-piece introduction for Private Party that I fucking loved, man. They really sold their experience growing up black in Brooklyn. Cassidy and Quen first met in wrestling school and bonded over Cassidy's Jeff Hardy t-shirt. Hardy being the favorite wrestler of both men. Cassidy says that they were sitting right next to each other with their trainer, Amazing Red, when they got the call from AEW, and it was a real moment for all three of them. Private Party is an entertainment-first babyface tag team, and I'm super excited to see them at Fyter Fest. As they say, work hard, party harder. The gimmick is simple, but when you have charisma like these guys have, you really don't need more than that.
No, and this was another one of those really good promos, like the one they did with Darby, where they're debuting. They don't necessarily need this epic showing because this is an introduction. They can go out, do some basic stuff, get people involved, but they have this promo where people are interested.
I think this is a super smart way to introduce characters to using documentary as the style, because it's always so awkward when a wrestler comes into the territory or they're doing their first thing and they're like, CM Punk's first thing in ECW, he was like, you see these tattoos, I'm straight edge. like just like talking about who he is as a person as an introductory promo. I always think that's so awkward. I think the documentary is a lot more natural way to kind of bring people in.
Yeah, it's unless that person is really known, like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn when they debuted in WWE, where you're just like, holy. But if you'll notice, shit.
NXT does shit like this when they introduce people. They do stuff like this. Every now and then,
you build them
every
up.
now and then they'll have someone, enter in a match or something like they did with Samoa Joe. But when they're doing vignettes for a wrestler or whatever, it's done in a faux documentary style.
And that's just a smarter way to do it, because you're building interest by not watching a promo. Mm-hmm. You're watching them talking about their lives and their story, which builds their character up, because your character is all about your story, and that's what a lot of people don't understand anymore. Not just people watching wrestling, but also wrestlers. They don't understand that if you don't have a good story to build the character off of, you're gonna fall on your face. So this was a great introduction to Private Party of people I've never heard of before,
and I'm stoked to see him wrestle.
A little bit more interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to see him wrestle, and they're going to have a cool match with, the best friends and everything. It was more interesting to me than the stuff with the Dark Order.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That fell flat. Yeah. You had too many people in the crowd just being like, what the fuck is going on? Who are these guys?
I honestly think if the Dark Order had vignettes on BTE before their debut, I think it would have worked a lot better.
Absolutely. I completely agree, because you're not just like, you have people like when Carissa and I were watching it, she was like, who the fuck are these guys? This is weird. And I was like, I don't know.
Both Sean and Shane were like that when I was watching it with them. So.
Yeah. So if you're having new people come in and you can't help the casual fan, you can't give them a name to that, you're harming yourself. So, it's with AEW, Double or Nothing, All In, we try things, we throw it at the wall, we iterate upon it, we make it better, we see what worked, what didn't work. This spot here with Christopher Daniels to me was much more engaging and more interesting than the stuff in BTE. It made that match actually make a little bit more sense of that these guys have worked so long together, and they're both older guys, and they probably had this match a handful of times already, but they want to put it in front of a different crowd, and that makes it engaging because now they've had those repetitions there, so they can put on a better match as opposed to, it's the first time we've worked together, we've known each other for 20 years. So it's fun stuff. This was a shorter episode, it felt like.
Yeah, it was only 7 or 8 minutes.
All the Road to Fyter Fest videos have been a lot shorter than the Road to Double or Nothing videos, which makes sense. We're kind of crunched for time here, but they're hitting the high notes. It'll be interesting to see if we have one this week. I'm not sure if we will. They probably will, to talk about the match that got sign kind of shadow announced on accident.
Well, and just to it's the go home, right? Yeah. Important to note, if you're going
maybe they'll bring over the Kenny's cocaine-filled dreams of Fyter Fest.
Hopefully they'll just reaffirm
BTE.
that whole idea again. Important to note, if you're going to Fyter Fest, this is sort of breaking news, just came out just recently. On Saturday, June 29th, just hours before Fyter Fest, CEO will be hosting an AEW meet and greet with some of the AEW stars from 12 to 2 p.m. inside of Panel Room 1. OC 103 map located on ceogaming.org.
Yeah. If you're not going, that part means nothing to you.
If you have not already purchased a badge into the gaming side of CEO 2019, each person that purchases a meet and greet ticket will also receive a free Saturday spectator pass into the rest of the event.
So before you go further in listing out the talent, that's something that's very, very important. A lot of conventions don't do this. These meet and greets are on the condition that precondition that you've already bought a pass in, so it's an additional fee. This is getting wrestling fans who are just like, oh man, I want to go meet some people and see this out before we go to the show. That gets them in the door to see what CEO is about, and that's a big
it's a really
tool
smart cross-promotional idea. Everyone seems to be on the tip of like what the point of this partnership is. It's to get people from each side to look at the other side, right? And it's very smart of CEO to not be money grubbing assholes, and
like 95% of conventions.
Right. By the way, we don't have a table at
Starcast. Yeah, we will not be at Starcast. That's semi-unrelated, but yeah, we will not be there because
fuck.
We ain't got that kind of money.
No, and I don't want to sound like I'm razzing them. Jonathan, you're welcome to play the heel on this one, but it's just we just didn't see the value in the price they were offering for the tables at this time. Maybe in the future we will if the demand is there and the value is there. But for what they were asking, we just weren't going to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's real. Like you said, in the future, it would probably be more beneficial to us. With some of the things that we have planned coming through in the future to, offset costs and help us out with things like that. But for now, the price that they were charging, as well as the overhead for, you and I, of like, we have to print a banner up.
We would have to do a lot. And the issue is the way that StarCast has been set up for the last two. It wasn't this way for the first one, but for the last two. They're even big podcasts. The We Watch Wrestling podcast used to be on StarCast. They're not anymore for the same reason.
We would essentially just be
vendors. There's no podcasting, which is funny because cast is in the fucking name, but there's no area for podcasters really, like a podcast alley. There's only, you can buy a vendor table, but vendor tables are priced as though you're going to be selling things.
Right. And for us going where we're just handing out
and hanging out, hoping that we could talk to people, maybe record a show or whatever at the table just casually. There's no value for us because it's more for, there are going to be podcasts there. I think it's unfortunate that the podcasts there are going to be podcasts that talk primarily about WWE product, which is, it just always seems weird. But then again, StarCast is all about that, right? But for us, it's just not going to happen.
It's just not worth it this time around. Maybe next year. There's that. There's the financial side of it, as well as we would be shackled to a table the entire time, the entire weekend, which is not really, it's not at least for this trip. It's not terribly fun for us because, half of our group has never been to Chicago before. Let's go see.
Yeah,
the city.
we would do it if we felt like it made sense for us, but it just doesn't make sense this time around. Anyway, back to CEO. This meet and greet that they're doing will feature the Young Bucks, Hangman Page, SCU, Nyla Rose, Kylie Ray, Michael Nakazawa, and Joey Janela. And of course, you buy only for the stars that you want.
It's not an all-in-one of you pay X dollars and you get everyone's. You pick who you want. I think the list that they have is great. They have the bigger names as well as some of the newcomers. Besides Michael Nakazawa, that's fucking stupid, but whatever. But it gets some eyes on some of the newer people the new stars that they're trying to build up. So this is the best way to do a meet and greet. It's not all just the names. So you're sitting there and it's like, oh, well, I only have $100. I have to pick and choose of, do I want to talk to Cody and Pentagon, or do I want to see the Young Bucks? It gets you in the room. It's like, oh yeah, man, I can take a picture with Kylie real quick. That'll be cool.
Each meet and greet ticket comes with a choice of an 8x10 photo with your selected star that they can sign, or sign a personal item of your choice plus a selfie photo taken with your own phone/camera. Each ticket includes only one signed item, so you choose between the 8x10 or your personal item. Visit smash.gg/CEO/shop to purchase your meet and greet tickets. Another meet and greet that broke this week: Cody and Brandy book signing and photo op Thursday, August 29th at 12 p.m. Central Time. Of course, this will be in Chicago at the Pro Wrestling Tees store. $75 to get in. Only 100 tickets on sale. June 26th at 12 p.m. they go on sale. That's 12 p.m. again, Chicago time.
I was gonna say, I was like, when I was reading through this, like, I don't know if we should really talk about this because I imagine they're already all completely sold out because it's such a small amount of tickets. Small amount of tickets make sale. It's a very small.
Yeah,
shop.
but they
can't really have a shit ton.
They
of
go on
people
sale
in there.
June 26th.
Yeah, so it's a little pricey. You get some cool stuff, but don't let the number of tickets going on sale discourage you. It's literally because the Pro Wrestling Tee shop is small.
And they don't want people in there all fucking afternoon, basically.
Or just crowding up the sidewalks, which can be an issue in bigger cities. If you don't get into this one and you're really looking forward to meeting Cody and Brandy, they're going to be signing and doing stuff at StarCast. That's probably going to be your better opportunity.
Yes. This package includes one Heart of the Mountain book signed by Cody and Brandy, one Nightmare Family Chicago Flag exclusive t-shirt, size small through 5XL, one photo op with your own camera, additional autographs from Cody, $30, additional autographs from Brandy, $30. So really the value here is if you want that Chicago t-shirt, or if you were going to get the Cody book signed, that's what you wanted, was to buy a Cody book and get it signed, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're having to pay $75 and then an additional $30 to, if what you want is a personal item signed, it's probably not the best way to get it done.
Well, to an extent, if you're able to get into the tickets to do this, and you had a personal item that you wanted to get signed, you might as well do it here and then not have to fight a line at StarCast,
or as much of a line, rather.
So, yes, which we don't know how they're going to cap any of the meet and greets or anything like that. So, if you can get into this one and there's personal items you want signed besides the book, I highly recommend that you just take. It's going to be the same price at both places. Just do the once.
Yes. PW Pro Wrestling Tees is also holding a $1 charity raffle for 2 ringside all-out tickets. Section F, row 1, seats 8 and 9. Profits go to Kara. Check ProWrestlingTees.com for details. That's only $1 per entry.
So we're entering.
You assume
Just leave our friends
you
sitting over
assume
there.
I have dollars to put towards this thing. Bold. Speaking of bold, let's get into these Fyter Fest predictions, huh? Let's do it. I think we should start at the bottom here because that's where all the low matches are. Work our way up.
Yeah, go for it. I already wrote mine out, so I'm just going to type in yours.
Good. Well, in that case,
Yeah.
Kylie Ray versus the librarian Leva Bates. She will be accompanied by Pretty Peter Avalon, the other librarian, which is interesting. Maybe the episode this week or BTE will kind of set this up better, because as far as we know, when last we saw Pretty Peter Avalon, he was only sort of kind of indicating that he had some interest in Leva. So maybe this week we'll see a big romantic swell between the two of them, or maybe it'll just happen. Who knows? Kylie Ray versus the librarian. What do you think, Jonathan?
I'm going with Kylie. Also, we didn't say anything, but this match was announced by, I think, ITV or someone accidentally because they posted the picture of the card. This actually hasn't been officially announced yet, but it is happening. I'm going with Kylie. I think it would be better for her to go over in this one, and I feel like the librarian thing, they kind of need to be jobbers for a little while. And this is a good opportunity for Kylie to have a good intro moment that wasn't getting train wrecked in the
I do
four-way.
think Kylie loses more by losing than the librarian does. Leva and Peter, what's remarkable about them will be this ridiculous gimmick they have and their sort of chemistry, right? Winning or losing, I don't want to say wins and losses don't matter. They do, but for certain characters, they don't so much. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, that's the thing that's going to be interesting with this is that, yes, wins and losses matter, but you're still going to have quote-unquote
Right.
jobbers.
Or you're still going to have people
So-
who winning and losing the match is not necessarily the most important
intention.
part about their character.
Right.
SCU versus the Best Friends versus Private Party. By the way, I'm going with Kylie.
Okay.
SCU versus the Best Friends versus Private Party. The winner of this match will move on to All Out, where they will wrestle for a buy-in to the first round of the tournament that will start once TV starts.
Yes. So the stipulation on this is obviously whoever wins this will face the winner of a tag match at Fight for
Right,
the
that
Fallen.
has not been announced yet.
Right. So that's the stipulation there. You're building your tag tournament. You're building your first two entries of you have to fight your way in, which is a better way to do it. It's a fun way to do it. I went with my heart, not my brain. I went with the Best Friends. I'm gonna get screwed again, but you know what? That's the fun part about doing
It's important to know SCU is just Kazarian and Scorpio Sky here.
Yes, because Daniels is fighting
Right.
later.
I love the Best Friends with all my heart. I think Private Party are going to win this match.
Okay. Watch us both be wrong.
But I'm there. I'm coming to watch the match for the Best Friends, but I think Private Party are going to win the match, and I think they're gonna
Fair enough.
They're gonna do some super awesome, impressive shit with the Best Friends, and SCU will be there as well.
Yeah, I kind of feel like SCU is there to take the pin, and they're there to help highlight these other two teams and build them up. But, those two guys of SCU, they know how to put on a good match when they're not the
Plus,
main
I think it's kind of interesting to you take Daniels out of the equation, and then SCU comes up on a loss. You know what I mean?
Right, and that builds their gimmick up because they have to start building SCU to work without
Right.
Daniels.
Michael Nakazawa versus Alex Jabali in in a hardcore match.
Again,
In a
17
very
points.
slippery hardcore match. Jabali.
Yeah, that's what I picked. Yeah, there's no question.
This whole thing just seems to put Jabali over, And usually I would have a problem with that because he's definitely a non-wrestler and it's very vanity stuff.
fine.
But it's Michael Nakazawa. He's fucking silly, right? So like,
it's a silly match for.
it's
fun.
like having a celebrity
And
go
I
over
think-
Doink the Clown or whatever. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's not like
Yeah,
how
I mean, this match last year was built to be a fun match, and we're just putting it here because Jabali.
Yeah, I imagine there will be some silly spots in here. Maybe like somebody,
Matt's gonna run in like 6 times and just like fucking kill
someone
him.
taking a bump onto some gummy bears or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like just playing with a lot of deathmatch stuff. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I guarantee you though, Matt is going to interfere.
We'll see. I would. I don't know.
With the hatred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or his weird obsession, at the very least.
But yeah. I already know
What do
who
you
you're
want to
picking
put
for
on
this
it?
match.
Huh? That Matt
What?
interferes. Give me
have
some
any-
action.
I-
What are you saying? If Matt interferes, what happens?
Yeah. Between us, like
Yeah.
a stipulation. Loser buys the winner a T-shirt at Fight
Okay.
for the Fallen. Okay. We'll put that in the notes.
Yuka Sakazaki versus Riho versus Nyla Rose.
I already know who you're picking. You're gonna pick.
I
Nyla
don't
Rose.
think Nyla Rose is going to win the match. I don't know.
Really, I'm surprised.
See, now you got me second guessing myself. It's only because she had that match before and she lost that I would think that the hope here is to kind of put her over as a...
What, the 4-way?
Yeah.
You can't count the 4-way, dude. There was no way she could go over in that match after the match
Yeah.
changed.
I'd like to see Nyla win. I don't know. This one's hard for me, but I guess Nyla Rose. I guess that you're right about me.
I picked Riho. I think it's a good spot for Riho to win and get some good face time and build both of the Yuka Sakazaki and Riho up. You know, they're fighting a bigger lady, and it's going to be interesting to see how they work together to go over. But I think Riho is going to go over.
Well, see, Nyla Rose is definitely the combustible Edison in there, the X Factor, if you will. Adam Page versus Jimmy Havoc versus Jungle Boy versus M to the J to the F, the salt of the earth.
So let's make this one, instead of just picking the winner of who do you think is going to pin who? Because that does
Is this
play
elimination?
into this match a bit. No, it's fatal 4-way. So who's winning, but who's also eating the pin? Because it does play into this match a lot. If it's elimination, then we'll just erase this part. You know, whatever. But I personally, I think Hangman's going over because there's no point in putting him at a loss going into All Out. That would be stupid.
Yeah, but
At
he
the same
does
time,
have the
I could see
injury,
him
right?
losing. Yeah, but I could see him losing because that does put heat on him to really show well at All Out. Either way, I say Paige is going to be pinning MJF because MJF is going to be the fucking whipping boy in this match.
I'm going to say MJF pins Jimmy Havoc.
Okay.
The reason being because he's going into such a sort of lopsided thing where everybody wants to kick his ass. It kind of feels like the story's built for him
to come out ahead.
to find a way to come out ahead. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's the other thing I was thinking about is, like, you know, Hangman can technically lose this match and
Doesn't
it
do
doesn't
anything
hurt him
for him.
because
The only reason he has this match in the first place is because he wanted to kick MJF's ass. Now he's got these two other guys in the way also trying to do the same thing. It really doesn't hurt him to not get the first pin. You know what I mean?
right. Or the
Right.
pin period. We know for a fact, no matter what anyone says, Adam Page will not take the pin
Yeah,
of
no,
this
I
in
can't
this
see
match.
that happening.
If they do, then they're building up a really interesting angle, which would be fun and very interesting. but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think it would be. There's no wisdom in doing that. I don't think at this point.
No, but it's still. This is. I think to me personally, this is going to be the most fun match on the card.
I think it'll be great. Possible interference from from
the rest of
from
the fucking
Luchasaurus.
roster. Luchasaurus, Cutler.
yeah. Christopher.
I do think Luchasaurus is definitely gonna. Yeah, that's they're buddies now. That just
Well,
makes
it's.
too much
I
sense.
mean, it is no holds barred because it is a 4-way. So,
Yeah.
Expect to see a staple gun. Christopher Daniels versus Shima.
I'll have to warn Carissa.
Shima.
Yeah, I picked Shima too. Shima's going over, even though this one could go either way.
It could go
Either guy could go over.
either way, but they seem really hot on showing off Shima, and I think they need to justify him getting as much as he's gotten so far, and I think that it doesn't matter if Daniels loses against Shima, right? With him being his mentor and stuff like that, I don't think it matters.
It doesn't at all, and we've talked about it before. We in a different aspect with Dustin that he may do 1 or 2 matches as retirement stuff. He's going to hit some highlights. Literally, this is what Christopher Daniels is doing. He's hitting some highlights of things hasn't got to do before, and that he wants to help out other talent because he does have another title as director of talent relations. He knows. This is the twilight time.
I mean, he's said in interviews that he was going to retire a few years back anyway.
Soon.
He was planning to retire before AEW was even an opportunity for him, so. Yeah.
And, I mean, he did a match with Stephen Amell. You don't do that when you're in your prime. You do that in the twilight of your career.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Shima. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's got to be Shima.
Either way, there's no real loser here.
I agree. Jon Moxley versus Joey Janela in a death match.
Oh, is it actually slated to be a death match?
Yes.
Oh, fuck yeah. Someone's going to fucking bleed out. It's going to be great.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, I picked Moxley because I'm so happy for this match. It's going to be so good. I don't see any way where Joey Janela wins unless it's because Moxley passes out from blood loss.
I think Moxley's going to win in a demonstrative fashion, especially if the rumor is that his match with Kenny is going to be a Chicago street fight, which why wouldn't it be if you're in Chicago, right? I think the play here is to have Moxley beat Joey Janela unconscious.
Yeah. This is the time for Moxley to literally just go crazy.
And I think Janela is the perfect person to pick for this thing because he will go wherever Moxley wants to go with him. And I think this is going to be the match that catches the headlines for sure. For better or worse.
This is good. Okay. We can already just go ahead and say Anthony will not watch this.
It's kind of like John's fighting like a young, less classically handsome version of himself, which is...
It's more like he's fighting Mick Foley from the 90s before he went off
Sure,
the cage.
But Moxley was like that before going to WWE, right? So it's really interesting.
Yeah, so this is... it's going to be such a good match. You're right. It's going to make the headlines good or bad.
I think they have something... I don't think they would do this match unless they had something big in mind in terms of a spot.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the same way. I feel like the Skype or Slack conversations, however they're talking as a company, it's guaranteed Moxley just throwing shit at the wall and just, bouncing ideas off, and Janela's like, okay.
Do they make rubber chainsaws?
But like everything Moxley's saying, Joey is just like, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. And there's just no like, that seems sketchy. It's just 100% like, oh, I need to land on my head? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I think Jon Moxley with what they have planned for him in the future, I think he's going over Joey Janela. I think Joey Janela is going to impress in the way that Mick Foley impresses, right? Where people are impressed by what he did to his body more than that he won the match.
I think it's going to be that, and I think the athleticism that he shows off is really going to shock
I think it's
going to
be an amazing thing to see, man. I think it's going to be wrestling like we haven't seen from a high production value company like this in a long time.
And potentially Carissa's last wrestling match she ever watches. She made it through Hell of War, but this is on a different level.
I don't know. I mean, Hell of War is... If you put Hell of War on a TV channel that wasn't 300 plus or whatever it was, I think...
They're getting sued.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. The Elite being the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega versus the Lucha Brothers and Laredo Kid. I really couldn't say where I think this one's going to go.
I couldn't either. There's no, basis or history of here that would lean me one way or the other. So I'm really just I pick Lucha Trio because that's who I want
them to win, but I don't know. With the Young Bucks and Omega on a team.
Yeah, it doesn't seem likely, but at the same time, if they don't win, then they're setting a bit of a bad precedent.
Yeah. Yeah, that the Lucha Brothers are just there to job.
Either way, yeah, it's going to be a fun one, but the Lucha Trio needs to win. Otherwise, it's setting a very bad precedent for the company.
I'm going to go with the Elite, but only because I could go either way, and you're going with the Lucha Brothers. Or the Lucha triplets.
And I'm just saying, the Bucks can't win everything.
I agree with that.
And if they do, and especially since they have a lot more to lose against Cody and Dustin.
Well, you could also just argue that the Lucha Brothers and Laredo Kid are going to win because their teamwork is tighter than Omega and the Bucks together.
Yes. And you could say that the Bucks are angry now, so they're not going to be fighting as smart. So there's
Omega's coming off a loss where he broke his nose and then got jumped by a guy he wasn't expecting. You know what I mean? Plus,
the Bucks got embarrassed in Mexico.
Right. Plus, he's got all this stuff swirling around in his head about organizing the event and whatnot. Yeah. I think you're probably right, but I'm going to stay where I am.
That's fine. Yeah, as we've talked about when we've done these before, there's parts where we have to start choosing what we don't want so that there's differences.
And we're always, our hunches are always wrong anyway. So,
yeah, as we get told by everyone.
Cody Rhodes versus Darby Allin.
So my question first is, do you think there will be a stipulation added to this match this week? Or do you think it's just going to be a straight singles?
I think this will be a straight singles. Only because there are a lot of hardcore stipulations here. A lot. Let's see. Mox versus Janela is hardcore. Adam Page versus Jimmy Havoc versus Jungle Boy versus MJF is a 4-way, so it's automatically hardcore.
And Havoc is in it.
Right. The women's 3-way is automatically a hardcore match. Michael Nakazawa versus Alex Jabali is a hardcore match. SCU versus the Best Friends versus Private Party is automatically a hardcore match. The only ones that aren't hardcore stips right now are Kylie Ray versus Leva Bates and Christopher Daniels versus Shima and the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers.
Which, they may be hardcore matches. Not all of these matches are going to be hardcore. They're probably just going to be normal matches. They're just, by definition and technicalities, they are hardcore matches. I could see this being a straight singles as well.
Of course, AEW's already played the referee's discretion card a lot. So clearly they have no
Yeah,
problem doing that, and with a match like this, I don't think it would be called in disqualification, especially because I think booking wise they're trying to lean away from that as much as possible.
Right.
So,
I picked Cody because I don't know enough about Darby to really say one way or the other, as well as it puts Cody in a bad place if he loses.
I agree with that, but I don't see the point in having the match if you're going to have Darby Allin come up short, because everybody already knows that Cody Rhodes is a much bigger star than Darby Allin, right?
You could.
It just kind of seems like punching down. You know what I mean? It kind of seems like, oh, okay, of course, I knew he could beat that guy. He's he's Cody Rhodes. Of course he can.
So, you can have Darby coming up short. I mean, it's a shitty way to do it. It's a dusty finish kind of a thing where there's interference, and that's why Darby loses. It would be shitty, but it's kind of the thing I wouldn't mind it.
Who would you have interfere?
Brandy. That's just it. You can have anybody interfere. It'd be fine either way. There's, you could have Dustin come in and interfere when it really looks like Cody's losing.
Yeah.
You could have Kenny or the Bucks come in because it looks like Darby, because they want Cody to lose, and it looks like Cody's winning.
Right, or even
Cody
just have him cheat. It doesn't even have to be interference. Just have him cheat.
Yeah.
He has this big match against Darby Allin, and the only way that he's able to beat him is to cheat. But then again, then you head into Fight for the Fallen with him teaming with Dustin after having to cheat to win this match when he's clearly going to be the babyface in that match.
It's weird. It's one of those matches that's just really in a really weird
I
place.
feel like when it first got announced, it was like that was kind of cool. Now that this card's come together, it feels kind of strange.
Not even just this card, but the Fight for the Fallen match being announced the way it is. That's weird now.
Because this match is, we've known about this match forever, I feel like. And
yeah, this and the Elite match, and the Jabali, those were announced almost immediately.
Yeah.
So it's a weird one. I'm picking Cody because I don't have any basis to not pick Cody. But I do feel like there's going to be shenanigans.
Okay, that means the last prediction we have to make. I'm going to pick Darby Allin, by the way. The last prediction that we have to make, yes or no on any musical acts being there?
Oh, yeah. That's fair. Do you want to say musical acts, or do you want to say of any of Kenny's cocaine dreams taking place? We'll just say yes, / Kenny's cocaine dreams. Performing or just in the crowd?
Performing.
Dude, there's not a time.
Well, I think the joke here is that he talks about signing all of these musical acts, right? And then none of that, right? That's the same thing that happened with Fyter Fest, right? So I would assume no. I would assume that none of this stuff actually happens, and they make a joke about it, right? But
yeah, so I'll say yes. Just, But I agree with you that it's going to be... They're going to announce a whole bunch of shit, and then right as it happens, they're going to be, oh, so-and-so couldn't be here because of blah, blah, blah reason. And there may be some video vignettes to do that. It's it's kind of like how the Top Gear show on Amazon had that first season where they had all these celebrity guests, but they died right as they were trying to get to the studio. Right. So I think it's going to be something like that. But yeah, I'll say yes just for difference sake. But to be honest, no, I don't.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on the money there, where people will have cell phone videos where they're like, "Hey, sorry, I can't make it," and they'll stitch them all together or whatever.
Yeah, maybe it'll be Fozzy.
Maybe Fozzy surprises everybody.
Fozzy is on stage, the whole band, without Jericho. And then they have to say, yeah, we're going to have to cancel this because our lead singer, we tried, but he wouldn't show up. Or he shows up like wearing a mask and he's like, "Oh no, that wasn't Jericho."
Jesus. Thinking about Jericho, yeah. I wonder if Jericho will be involved in it anyway. Probably not.
Probably not, but the way that he did his thing makes me think that he will. It was too public.
Well, man, I'm super excited to see how this goes. The 26th, we will see the scorecard for Fyter Fest. Make sure that you're in with us at tinyurl.com/seeing the elite, that you're in the community when that happens so that you have a chance to take down the champ, if anybody can, equals Scorpion 1. They're coming for you. YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, podcast services everywhere. Subscribe, review, give us 5 stars, just like Meltzer. It makes us feel sweet. Jonathan, how sweet? Too sweet,
buddy. Too sweet.
Facebook.com/seeing the elite. Twitter @seeing the elite. I don't think we have anything more for this, people. This episode's already running a little long, but it's our go home to Fyter Fest, the first of these sort of non-pay-per-view events, and it will be interesting to see how it shakes out. Looking forward to Saturday.
Yes. We should go ahead and say our either episode this week or next or this coming week. So episode 15 or episode 16 is gonna be weird because we're gonna be talking about Fyter Fest as well as predicting Fight for the Fallen. So if I do it looking at it correctly, we should be okay.
I don't think we'll be talking about closing out Fyter Fest and predicting Fight for the Fallen same week.
No, yeah, so we should have a buffer there. It should be fine, but yeah.
But it will be. We'll talk about Fyter Fest 1 week, and then immediately the next week we'll be talking about Fight for the Fallen, basically.
Yeah, so next week will be our Fyter Fest recap, and then the week after that will be predictions for Fight for the Fallen.
That can't.
Oh, well.
Are you sure there's not another one in between?
No. So next week is we record on the 30th, which would be recap.
Okay.
And then the 7th is our Fight for the Fallen predictions, because the Fight for the Fallen's the 13th.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right.
Yeah. So it's gonna be the next 3-4 weeks are gonna be a little bit weird. People,
it's not going to be weird. It's going to be exciting because we have so much to talk about.
It's going to be exciting.
We have an entire card. Assuming Fight for the Fallen even happens, I'm so worried at this point that it's just like, we don't have a card at all.
So what? We just show up and it's just kind of like a giant mixer.
We know so very little about what's going to happen at that show, but maybe a bunch of it will be revealed at Fyter Fest, and then we'll kind of know the whole card in 1 week, I guess.
That's what happens to happen.
Yeah. Weird.
Well, no, they have 2 weeks to figure things out. We are just against the 8 ball because of how and when we record. So it is what it is. Just, format's going to be weird. There's going to be a lot more of like actual announcements that are going to be on Discord and stuff than in an actual podcast episode.
Man, it's going to be crazy, but it's going to be awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us once again. We'll be back next week, just after basking in the afterglow of Fyter Fest and talking about everything that went down during the weekend. It's going to be awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Jonathan, you got anything else for these people before we go?
I'm just checking quickly to see if there's anything for the Fight for the Fallen scorecards. It doesn't look like there is any dates or anything yet, but as soon as we know that, we will announce it either on the show or in Discord.
Pro Wrestling Scorecards will let us know, and we'll probably announce it right after they're done with Fyter Fest.
Yeah, it's a strange weekend for them. They have a lot of events happening very quickly together, close together.
They'll be all right.
So
thank you so much. As always, change the world.